What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Chris Meckley from ACI Aquaculture. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Devin. How are you?
Excellent, thanks. I haven't had you on in a while, so it's good. We need to catch up. Far too long.
Yes, it has been too long.
Yep.
And sorry about the light. It's not the greatest. I didn't get a chance to set everything up like I wanted to. I was in the middle of doing busy work at the farm, stuff that I been neglecting. And
It happens.
it is what it is. I was just excited that you asked me to do this. I know you did a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't have enough time to get ready to do it.
Definitely happens. So good to see you. So how's things? How's the farm? How's Coral?
Man, the farm's looking so good. The corals are looking so good. I just got done. I haven't been able to do all the work that I normally do on the farm because I'm short people.
Oh,
and
no.
I had a really good employee that didn't end up not working out so well. And he was really good at what he did, and he kept track of making sure everything was looked over really well. And so that was put on my shoulders. So I put all my work on my shoulders, plus all the work that he was doing, and
double duty. Double duty.
But I just got done preventively dipping acros in the farm, and I was so happy. I think it's the first time I've ever dipped. Well, not ever, but since COVID, when I had issues with employees. Then we had some issues with some flatworms, and now the acros are, I have to say, knock on some wood, clean, and they are looking absolutely spectacular. And I cannot wait for these things to be ready to rock and roll.
Ooh, nice. Anything new and fun? I mean, it's been a while. It's been a good year or two since I've been there now. I think it has.
No, you were just
no, maybe it was this year. I don't know. Life's a blur to me now. It was the spring. Okay, yeah, it was the spring. That's right.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Richard was here, and
a
whole mess load of people were here over ReefDudes.
That was fun. Yeah, it was this year. It feels like a long time, even though it was the spring.
I know, right? Time just flies. You just you never. It's just not enough time in a day.
Oh, so true. In the chat, Chris, how do you deal with APasia? Do you just have pest hunters in your tank?
APasias are a nightmare. That was actually one of the things that reasons why I do preventative dips on the corals. I even know that certain things I know are clean all the time. These APasias just end up popping up, on the tiles, and the tiny ones are really difficult for some of the bigger APasia control animals we have to get in to get. And, that's just, a never ending battle for us. We have in our Monty system, which is a little over 1,500 gallons now, I have a couple of hundred peppermint shrimp in there, mainly for the Monty nudity control, which has been a battle for the last decade. And they take care of the APasias really well. So peppermint shrimp have been very difficult. The ones that I want have been very difficult to get for the past year. Mm-hmm. So I've only been getting like 50 here and 50 there, but and I don't like to keep them in any numbers with my LPS corals and my wild coral systems because they tend to irritate the corals.
Yeah.
But putting a half a dozen in a 600-gallon tank, we've got our wild coral systems. There's 6 of them, 7, 8, 10. I don't know. So it's a lot. We put about 6 to 10 in each of those. And they seem to do a pretty good job, but we still have to go through there. We use Frank's F APasia. I love that stuff. I don't know about anybody else. I've tried all the other APasia.
That's the best.
Put on. And the F APasia works so damn well. I mean, it works on Mojanos. It works on Noose and Zoos. It works on, pretty much anything that you don't like in your system. The daisy polyps, all that stuff it works on. So Frank knows me really well. I'm ordering, half a gallon of APasia every like 6 to 8 months, because actually I haven't ordered it in a while. But with the peppermint shrimp, and we use copper band butterflies. Again, they're hit and miss. So I don't recommend people putting a copper band butterfly in their in their reef system. If you do it with caution and observe it. If all of a sudden one thing that they do love is microlords. So if you put one in and you have microlords, and your microlords all of a sudden stop opening up, get the copper band out because he's picking at them.
I have lost many nice acans through my day or micros because of that. I used to have a very nice collection, and they've slowly diminished, and it was hands down the copper band. So, sadly.
I have a nuisance foxface that likes Bower Bankies.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they don't bother APasias at all. But yes, fish
Yep.
are reef safe fish. I don't think that you can call any of the bigger fish that we call reef safe. Reef safe.
Yep.
Are they coral safe? Yeah, hit and miss on a lot of them. I mean,
With caution.
so
Yeah.
we use peppermint shrimp, APasia, and we also use. I've used kalkwasser with a real fine syringe needle.
Yeah.
Inject the base, and it burns them. I've even used potassium or sodium hydroxide. I don't like to use that stuff. That stuff's really, really touchy. You and I have had this conversation. Yep. We're not going to get into it tonight.
I read about people doing that on APasia. I was like, huh, interesting. I haven't tried it, but one day I will just for fun. But apparently, but you're going to have some collateral damage of the close proximity, I'm assuming.
You know, it's so funny. You know, Jake Adams and I had so many conversations about so many different things and ways to control different things. And you know, Jake called me up one day. He's like, "Hey, I found something that works really good for APasias." He's like, "I'm like, what?" He's like, "Drain cleaner." I'm like, "The hell are you buying drain cleaner? You know, that's like the worst grade of sodium hydroxide you can possibly use." He's like, "Yeah, but I'm only using a little bit." Well, you used a little bit, and you killed a lot.
Dang. Yeah, that's sketchy.
I miss that man. I miss him so much. Yep. I can't believe he's been gone for a year already. The things that we used to talk about on a regular basis, you know, it's a void in my life that hasn't been able to be filled. Although I've been filling it with a lot of friends and other colleagues and stuff like that, which has been good. But back to the APasias, I just recommend that when you get a coral, put it in a quarantine. Yeah. Anybody that doesn't quarantine their corals, I mean, I've said this a billion times on many different live streams. You want problems? Don't quarantine. You know, if you quarantine, don't blame anybody but yourself. And fair. You know, you can set your aquarium up with, you know, dry rock. Personally, I think that's a lot of the problems with a lot of aquariums nowadays, because you don't get that natural bacteria that lives in real live rock. Mm-hmm. And you know, I'm learning a lesson because I set one of my big systems up with just Julian Sprung Stax rock. Yep. And I just bought 2 boxes of Australian rock, the most expensive rock I've ever purchased in my life, to put into the tank, just to add some, you know, to see if that helps to improve some of the issues, because I've gone through everything I can possibly go through.
Did you just do it, or did you do it a while ago? Like, what's the verdict so far?
Oh, it's only been in a month and a half.
Okay.
So I'm not going to know anything until, you know, some of these issues either subside or start getting better. And maybe it won't do anything at this point, because, you know, the system is 3 years old now, and I don't put anything in that system but freshly cut corals. So it's basically tissue and no real exposed skeleton. In theory, that's supposed to, you know, keep pests away. But
well, here's the question: is the Australian rock bringing any pests to your system? Like, did you introduce some Australian pests that you're not aware of yet?
Well, if they can live outside of the water on dry rock for,
fair,
you know, it's still moist.
Yeah.
So bacteria is, you know, it's survived this planet for 4.5 billion years, something like that. So I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the bacteria that's internal was still moist and still living, even if it was just the tiniest amount.
Yeah.
As soon as it got wet again, it started to proliferate again. So if there was a pest that could handle being out of the water for
fair,
you know, 3 weeks, then it's my own stupidity for putting it in there.
Yeah, that's fair. Question before it comes up: can you ask Chris what you call the orange anacropora, the green polyps? Some people call it Tropicana. I actually have a photo from your tank, actually. I was just looking through them. That guy. What do you call it?
This coral, I imported this coral. Vincent Chalet sent this coral to me in January of 2021. I distributed this coral to Top Shelf Aquatics.
Yep.
And Top Shelf Aquatics renamed my coral from Plasma Blast and Acropora to Tropicana Acropora. You can call it whatever
Plasma
you want.
Blast.
I learned
Okay.
Plasma Blast is what we call it. Ours
Okay.
gets I have it cooking right now. My best looking pieces of it are growing under, surprisingly, 10K, 250 watt metal halides.
Yeah.
With about 600 par, and they have baby blue polyps.
Interesting, huh?
And when I move it under lower par and a combination, the polyps turn green. So if you cook it, it'll get blue.
Now here's a question, actually, because I have this coral, I'm assuming, you know, probably one of your babies in my tank. And mine was really high up in the tank, getting tons of par, and it was looking great and growing. It got really big, but then it started to pale out. And I moved a chunk of it, sitting at the far end of my tank on the sand bed. Now it's starting to regain all its oranges back again.
Well, I've learned a lesson a long time ago with high light. If you have super high light and super low nutrients, your corals will lighten in color. If you have super low light, where that coral is, and the nutrients are a little bit higher, it will regain its color. I've had acroporas that were in 200 par that had high nutrient levels and were spectacular looking. And then I've taken those same corals and put them in a different system to spread them out. So of course, you know, I lose the one, I got another one for backup. And I've had them continue to hold the color, but they're getting a lot higher light, and the nutrient levels are quite a bit lower. Okay. I've also had them in really high light with higher nutrients, and they turn brown because the zooxanthellae just proliferates like crazy with all that extra light that they're getting and all that extra nutrients. It just overpopulates the tissue with zooxanthellae, so it loses all of its color. Doesn't mean the coral's not healthy, but
that's fair.
You know,
so with Anacropora, do you find they tend to favor higher or lower par zones?
I don't think it really matters for
they
any
don't care.
Coral. Every coral can acclimate to whatever you throw at it.
True.
I mean, I have acanthophilias that are in one system that are at like 250 par, and they're blown up like big balloons, you know. And then I've got them when my import side, I keep them between. I just did this the other day for it was between 50 and 100 par. And they're blown up like the balloons, and they look spectacular. So
it's irrelevant.
if you acclimate your corals, I mean, think about what it was like back in the 90s. Okay, what did we have? You know, a lot of these reefers weren't even around in the 90s.
Big halides.
You know, we had metal halides and we had T5s. I used to have some amazing corals that today everybody's like, they're low light corals. You can't do that to them.
Watch me. Yeah.
You're inexperienced, you know. I mean, the experience says it all. Any coral can be acclimated to high light or low light. Certain corals go into lower light, they just will never get their color in them like they're supposed to.
Fair.
But from my experience, the lower light corals being acclimated to higher light, they'll hold their colors. It's just, it takes time, you know. It's like you and me. You know what happens to us when we go out into the sun? We get fried. We get burnt. We're hurting. We don't.
Got to ease yourself into it.
If you burn a coral, unfortunately, you're going to probably kill the damn thing. You know, even if you put it back in the lower light, if you catch it soon enough, you can probably save it. But I've had so many people buy Wellsophilia, Trachophilia, flat bottom trachys, and cone bottom trachys, and we keep them like 30 to 50 par because they don't like a lot of light. Acanthophilias don't like a lot of light. And when store owners get them, I make sure that, you know, I tell most of the store owners know me well enough that are regulars that, you know, they know that when they buy a Welso or Welso, I keep saying Welso, it's Trachophilia.
Close enough.
Trachophilia, Acanthophila, Endophilia, you know, they want to put them in a tank that's well lit, but they got to move them away from the focal point of the LEDs that they're using. And that's the problem. LEDs tend to be harder on Trachophilias, Acanthophilias, Cinerinas, those solitary polyp corals that live deep, that don't get a ton of light. They tend to put them too close to the focal point of the LEDs, and they burn them. And they don't buy them. They're too afraid to buy them because they just die on them because they're inexperienced with what they need to do to keep them alive.
That's fair.
Acclimate them. You know, take your time. These things are precious, man. You shouldn't be just freaking trying to get instant gratification when you're dealing with a living animal. And it happens way too often.
It does.
Saddens me, to be honest with you.
Well, people these days have very short attention spans, and everyone wants it now. And, you know, not surprised in reef. I know when I was at the early days of reefing, I want everything in there right away. Now I have a nano tank on my desk. It's like, yeah, I just let it run for like a month before I put anything into it. Just no rush
Yeah.
anymore. But in the early days, I was definitely, I want it now too. Before I learned reefing teaches patience.
Yeah, I mean, talking to my supply line in Indonesia,
Hmm.
we had some issues with our trackies there for a little while, and I go back through all my conversations I had with my one friend over there, and I'm the one that told him that they need to go into like 30 to 50 par, and I changed out my lights, and all of a sudden the par went from like 40 to 50 to like 90, and then these wells of the Trachophilias were just blown up like balloons.
Hmm.
Within 2 days, we're like sucked in, and I'm going, oh shit, what did I do to the corals? I ended up having to turn off. I only have over that system. There's only 16 T5 bulbs over 8x4,
Yeah.
but I ended up turning off every other twin bulb fixture
Hmm.
and then rotating which ones was on for like a week to acclimate the corals to the
Huh.
lighting so they didn't get basically sunburn, you
Yeah.
know? Or I take them and I put them into my packing table that we don't use all the time because it was mainly put in for when we have a big sale or something where we need the extra space for the
Yeah.
packing. And now I use it as another place to hold corals, but it's actually the perfect place to hold and receive when we receive, deeper water corals because
Hmm.
there's literally a Reef Bright
Yeah.
LED bar over top of it and two
Very
twin
subtle.
bulb T5s, and they're like 3 foot above the surface of the tank, and they're
Yeah.
getting like 20 to 30 par, and the corals love it. Those
Yeah.
deeper water corals like that love it, and they're also friggin' expensive nowadays. So it's better to
Yeah.
put them where I know they're going to be happy, and if they're not getting enough light, I can always keep them there for a week, 2 weeks,
Hmm.
and then slowly move them over into the higher light areas, and they tend to adapt a lot better.
That's fair.
But that's just the key.
So,
Un-
so with those guys, you said like a week or two you put it in the lower light. If someone is acclimating something, they have no idea where it came from, and they wanted to bring it to whatever their tank is. Like in general, how long do you think it would take to acclimate a coral? Like 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks? I know it depends, but just like in a general sense.
Well, it depends on the species.
Hmm.
Acros, I don't believe in acclimation of them. I think it's the most ridiculous thing on the planet. It doesn't make any difference whether you throw them in high light right away or low light right away. It's a matter of
Hmm.
what your nutrient load is and whether they can handle, whether it's going to be sufficient for them. When you're talking about deeper water corals like them, you know, anywhere from a week to 2 weeks
Hmm.
is, and of course, because I've got the privilege, of knowing how long my suppliers actually held these corals,
Yeah.
and they can tell me basically where their divers have collected them,
Hmm.
and different times a year there's intense light coming down to those corals at 90 to 100 feet of water, because the water is not as silty and as dirty.
Yeah.
So different times a year,
Different.
and I know that because of all the years of experience of doing it, different times a year, I'm like, oh, if I forget, I'm like, oh shit, you dumbass. You should have put them in lower light this time,
Yeah.
but just be patient. You're dealing with a life.
Hmm.
It's like an infant. The way I look at it is if you're a parent and you have and you want instant gratification with your reef tank, you shouldn't have kids. I mean,
Yep.
seriously, because they're just like human babies. They require attention. They require
Yep.
you to look at them, observe them, understand them. And if you don't think that way when you're spending money, your hard-earned money on these animals, then shut your reef tank down and sell it to somebody else because you're just going to kill it and you're going to waste money. These
Hmm.
animals don't deserve to be put through instant gratification for somebody's mind. They
Yep.
deserve to be taken care of the way they're supposed to be taken care of.
No, it's so
And that's
true.
kind of blunt and probably hurts some people's feelings, but I really don't care because they are living creatures and we need to be very respectful of what we have the privilege of being
Hmm.
able to own. Because in a year from now, we won't see acanthophilias, we won't see
Yeah.
cinereans, we won't see trachophilias. They're never going to be imported again into this country from Indonesia. It's over.
Yep.
And nobody really talks about that. Nobody, it's all in the now, the now.
Hmm.
Think about the future of what we have.
Yeah.
And
That's
we
good
don't have
points.
very long to learn how these things work and whether or not we're even able to reproduce them in captivity. I mean, yeah, you can frag them, but God, it takes 2 years for the frag to turn into a colony and make it look decent again,
Yep.
and that's just not profitable. It doesn't make sense as a coral farmer to be cutting up acanthophyllias into 4 or 8 pieces
And care for it for
healing
2
them.
years. Yeah.
An acropora, sure, I'll put a bud this big
Mm.
in a tank and take 2.5 years to grow it out, because after that 2.5 years is up, guess what? It's going to produce every month for me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's farming. You know, fragmenting acanthophyllias and trachyphyllias is, it's not farming. It's
a slow recovery. Yeah.
Yeah. I
No,
mean,
no, it's
a lot of them die too. I mean, if you don't get them cut just right. I experimented with it just recently, and I've got, out of the 8 from each colony, I've got 4 left that lived, and I understand it now. I understand
50-50.
what I did wrong.
Yeah.
Now the next time I cut one, I'm gonna be like, okay,
now
gotta make sure I get this done right.
Is it in like how you cut it and where the mouth is, or is it like iodine, like all the proper disinfectants afterwards, or?
I think it's a combination. I mean, I don't change my regimen when it comes down to cutting a coral that is not normally something people frag. I have a particular regimen for, say, elegance corals, or that's really the only other one that I use the regimen on, because everything else is pretty much fraggable, except for the solitary polyps, you know. But you know, we use I make my iodine dip look like Arizona green tea.
Yeah.
And I put, you know, I think I mentioned it too. I mentioned it on your program here before. And they go in there for like between 10 and 15 minutes after the cut's done.
Yep.
And I actually started running iodine in through my saw after I'm done cutting the coral.
Such a good idea.
Yeah, why not? I mean, iodine's like, you know, shit, nobody talks about iodine nowadays. Now we got all these other stupid remedies for cuts. Why don't they just put mercurochrome back on the damn market? You know, that was cheap and easy, and you could put a dab of red stuff on your hand, and you know what?
You're good.
It went away if your body was short of iodine, because all that yellow that was on your hand, you've got absorbed into your body pretty quickly. It actually can help you out a little bit. If your body's deficient of iodine, you got problems.
That's fair. No, that is a good one. Like, I mean, whenever I cut anything, I don't do it for acros really, but any other stuff I frag, I guess I do at times. I don't always, depends. But yeah, iodine dip afterwards just works wonders. It's just any funky bacterials off the saw. It's a good idea. But putting in the saw makes sense, actually. I don't know why I haven't done that. I usually just dip it afterwards. But
you know, for me, iodine would be my go-to dip for everything. But it's not cost effective for me on the scale that we're dipping.
That's fair.
So all these coral dips that are on the market, there's not a thing wrong with any of them. They work. They're expensive. I mean, if you take and you think about what Coral RX and, you know, Revive, and I mean, hell, I don't even know the names of all these dips that are out there. I actually, my go-to, because Mark Esquenazi sends me 4 times, you know, the strength concentration of his me coral dip, which is basically a lot of those herbal oils. I get a gallon of that usually about once a year, and we dip every week in like 5 and 15 gallon dipping vessels. You know, and it lasts me for a long time, and I don't know what I pay for it anymore. Sometimes it's hey, you got any acros? I'll send you a gallon, send me some acros. So, you know,
fair trade.
Yeah, but you know, when we're cutting corals, you know, I could use the Coral RX, or I could use the me, or I could use. I mean, I got a 5-gallon jug right here. Oh,
you ready?
Sprung's Revive.
Yeah.
You know, I have that. I mean, Julian mixed me up a 5-gallon jug of it like a year ago, and I probably got 2/3 of it left. I still use it because it does work better than the me on certain pests. I gotta have it here. I just have to use like 10, 15 times the amount of it to make it work. But for when we're dipping corals, they go, you know, I don't even dip the corals before they go through the saw. I mean, there's no point if I'm going to be using iodine at the end on the coral, because I want to sterilize the tissue. And if you do that green tea method, every single parasite that's on there, with the exception of like red bugs and maybe spiders, they're gone. You know, flatworms, nudibranchs, Goni nudies. Oh, somebody found Pavona nudies now.
Really? Oh, yeah. It's a nudie for everything out there, eh?
There is. There's a pest for everything. It's one day we'll find it. But like I get wild euphyllias in, and we chop up the wild euphyllias,
Mhm.
the branching, the Fimbrophilia, Parancora, Paradivisa, the Iamensis, and then the Euphilia cristata and glabrescens, and they're notorious for having flatworms on them.
Mhm.
Um, and I could waste my time and dip them in, Revive or the Me, and then put them through that stress, and then put them through the stress of being cut, and then put them in iodine and stress them out even more, or just stress them out twice by cutting them, cleaning the stems, and throwing them in some iodine to sterilize it, and then gluing them down. And it's a lot much less of an issue for the animal itself. The less stress you can put the animal under, the better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And now I'm sold on putting it in my saw now. I don't know why I never did that, but it's a nice, easy way to do it. I like it. Question from the chat before I forget about it. Josh asked, what do you consider sufficient nutrient load for acros and 300 par?
I would say, like phosphates are always the same for me, no matter what.
So what are yours at? What's the
in
same?
my farm systems, I want my phosphates to always be at least 0.03, as high as you're gonna laugh. People are gonna be like, "What? 0.1?"
Okay, that's fine. I kind of go 0.03,
And
0.09. Same.
yeah, I
Wait,
mean,
yeah.
nitrates. I've been toying with nitrates for a long time, and honestly, I don't see much of a difference between with my acros. I have acros that are in 300 par on a regular, and the nutrient loads on the nitrate sides around 15 to 20.
Yeah.
And they're colored up. They look spectacular. I've even bumped them all the way up to like 30. And that's when all the ones in the higher light in the same system started to look like doo-doo, and then the ones in the lower light didn't look much better. So I was like, okay, we're going back down to where we were. We played with nutrients for years, and phosphates used to be the biggest issue we had with all of our systems. And now I end up dosing phosphates and nitrates in every single one of my systems. They're so balanced with minor traces and pH and everything that just naturally gets removed by the corals.
So do you find, so you dose nitrates and phosphates? I always kind of avoided that. I'm always just like, feed the fish more, add more fish. Like from a farm perspective, I mean, you'd have to feed more fish, but you'd also have an army of people picking algae off stuff. Like, does it make sense to dose it over just like throwing in a bunch more tanks and other stuff in your tank to up your nutrients?
You see all the tanks I have in my place?
Yeah, you have a lot. But I'm just saying, if you need to up it, right?
We did something about not quite a year ago. We did this experiment when I had that other employee that was really good. Like I said, he was good at what he did. He had a theory as to why we had such an APasia problem. And it was that he said, I feed my fish too much. And I said, if I stop feeding my fish so much, I'm going to get a problem fish out of that batch, and that's not going to be good. And I said, if I get that problem fish, you're going to be the one staying until all hours of the night to catch the son of a bitch out of there, because if he starts eating some of my prized corals, we're going to have a problem. Well, sure enough, we cut the feedings. We feed in my systems, and we got, remember, it's 18,500 gallons total, 9 systems, and there's, I can't even tell you how many fish are total in there. There's well over 1,000 fish in this place, probably at least 300-400 tanks. And we feed them in the morning. The tangs and fish that want to eat it, they get an entire sheet of nori per tank. Yeah, actually, the 1,000-gallon tanks get 2 sheets of nori because they got about twice the amount of fish in them. The 600-gallon tanks get 1 sheet.
Am I overfeeding my tank? I give a half a sheet, like a half a piece of paper size a day in my 200-gallon. It sounds like a lot if that's what you're feeding.
If your nutrients aren't bad and your fish are happy, that's all you care about. I mean, you can't overfeed your fish. You can overfeed your tank. And that's what people have to understand. If somebody says don't overfeed your fish, it's ludicrous to me, because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's like overfeeding you. Can you eat too much? Yeah, when you eat too much, you're freaking miserable. But you eventually stop, right? So you can't overfeed your fish. You can overfeed your ecosystem.
Fair point.
The little ecosystem that we have, if you overfeed your ecosystem, your nutrients levels are going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
So I was like, back to my little. I'll make it quick. We feed the nori, then we feed mysis, brine shrimp, and some calanus mixed into there to help give the corals a little boost.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning after we put the nori in, and then at lunchtime we feed the same thing, frozen food.
Yeah.
Oh, and we also throw BE mysis pellets in that mix every time. And then at the end of the day, we feed the fish again.
Yeah.
So I feed my fish basically 4 times a day. And I got a unicorn tang that's like 15
Huge.
or 16 inches, and the sucker's like that thick. Like you could get some fillets off of him. He's a thick fish.
Yeah.
So just be mindful of that. Don't overfeed your tank, and you won't have nutrient issues. Overfeed your fish. No, can't do it.
They're grazers. That's what they do. Yeah.
Yep.
In mine, anywhere between like 5 to 20 nitrates, I could care less. I'm happy. Phosphates, it's very similar to you. 0.03, 0.09 is kind of like anywhere in that range. I don't care.
My coral system, my wild import systems. Okay, I've got 3 wild import systems. One, I keep all my SPS corals in, and all the higher dollar corals. And that system has a phosphate level of 0.4 and a nitrate level. Yeah, and a nitrate
0.4 or
level
0.04?
No, 0.4.
Okay, that's up there.
Yeah, it's like, but it's a wild import system, so
Yeah.
I don't keep as intense a light over that import system because I'm not holding those corals. Hopefully, not holding them for more than a few months. Sometimes I have them a lot longer than that. But with the light and the nutrient load that's in there, even acros, I have 8 coral cares running at full blast with about 260 par hitting the corals. And the nutrients, like I said, are like 0.4 in phosphates and like 50 nitrates.
Yeah.
And then the other system is where more of the meteor fleshier, well, not the meteor fleshier, like the wavier, like ganies and the phobias and phobites and lords and stuff like that go. That system's got like a like a 1.0 nitrate, a 1.1 a 1.1 phosphate, and like a 80-90 nitrate. And the corals are thriving, but when I put a par meter in there, we're at like max 105, 110 on the corals, and it's just balance, and then I'm also doing what a lot of other people don't do. And I'm balancing my entire system out with the minor and trace elements, and my pH doesn't go below 8.3.
Yeah,
my alkalinity, the one that has the high nutrient level has a DKH that's finally come down.
What is it?
Like
what is it?
10, well, it was like 13.6 for years, like at least 2.5 years. It's down to like 10.5, goes up to 11.2, then it goes back down to like 10.4, 10.5. So it stays. I haven't put a calcium reactor. I haven't dosed that tank with anything but Kalkwasser.
Crazy.
I guess we're going on 3.5 years, 3 years.
That's crazy.
Well, was it 2020?
I still can't. I still can't fully subscribe to the don't care about elk, only dose on pH. I still find that one a hard one to grasp. Lots of people do it, and even people in the chat, I'm like, "Yep, Chris Meckley method, 18 months, going strong."
I had a really old school reefer
Mm-hmm.
that contacted me. He's called the shop one day, and he's like, "You don't know who I am." He's like, "I've been reefing probably as long as you have." He's like, "I got my first reef tank, and it was like 95." He's like, "And all I ever did was Kalkwasser."
Yeah.
He's like, "And then all this new things came out, and I started doing all this balling method." He's like, "And I've never been able to keep acros like I used to keep acros." He's like, "And then I found you." He's like, "And then I'm like, well, alkalinity is the most important part of your aquarium." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. That's why all scientists around the world say the alkalinity in the ocean is falling. We're going to have major problems." What do they talk about? pH.
Good old
pH.
pH.
And ocean acidification. So if this is where I don't understand the industry, but I do understand the industry because it's a money grab. Yeah. If you chase your alkalinity, they're going to make more money off. If you chase your pH, they're not going to make as much money off.
Well, it's not.
That's the reason why they care.
Okay. So for me, it's that if I only pay attention to pH, then my elk gets like crazy high. So like, for instance, it still does. Like the other day it was at 10.3, Today it was at like 9.6. I have it turn off my calcium reactor in certain things when it's above 9 to let it fall back down, then it kicks on again when it's this low. So I think I'm pretty sure the kalkwasser just doses every night. And then my other stuff doses at night, unless it's over 9, then it doesn't dose it. And it shuts off my calcium reactor. So I have some, like, kalkwasser's always on, but the other dosing turns off when my elk's too high. I'm too scared to let it go too crazy high.
It doesn't matter at all. You're going to have one or the other. Either you're going to chase your alkalinity and you're going to keep your alkalinity at 8.3 to 8.6 or 9 or 9.5. Yeah. And your pH is going to be super low and then go super, go higher during the day, and you're going to have something fluctuating. Yeah. You focus on one or the other.
Yeah, fair.
Does chasing your alkalinity work?
I chase both.
You're a glutton for your own damn punishment.
Yes, I am. Maybe I should care less about elk. Maybe I'll loosen up the automation controls a bit and let it be a little more free range and see what happens.
But this old school reefer is just, he's like, dude, he's like, I started dripping kalkwasser again. And he's like, and I saw really good improvements in a lot of my corals. He's like, and then I saw your videos, and he's like, this guy's on to something. And I'm like, I didn't reinvent the freaking wheel. I just fine-tuned the way you dose kalkwasser, in my opinion. I mean, were people using doses of those kalkwasser? Sure they were. Were they using pH controllers to dose kalkwasser? I don't think anybody was doing it until I started talking about it. Maybe there was. I don't know. I don't really care. All I know is it works, and it's cheap, and my corals have never looked better, and I've helped hundreds, maybe thousands of people around the world freaking keep SPS corals that never were able to keep them because all they did was check their alkalinity.
Even tons in the chat, same thing, saying they're on it works, doing the Chris Meckley method. So awesome. you
Spread
make
the word.
Okay, so we're gonna dig into this for a second. So you mix a big vat, pre-mixed, and then dose it, and then mix a new vat and do it. I do the kalkwasser reactor method, just because I don't want to stir method. Reactor, stir, same thing. Mixes it. I mean, which is kind of the same thing. It's just
kind of.
I'm lazier and don't want to be mixing it every other day, so I just add a scoop in every 10 to days, 14 days. So it's not quite.
Honest,
yeah, no, exactly. It's I shoot for every 10 to 14 days. Who knows? But I'm like, it probably needs to up the potency a bit because I know it loses potency over time. So do you think there's, other than wasting a couple $100 on a stir, is there any big difference in the two methods of using a reactor versus a vat? Is it just a potency thing or something else?
It's a consistency thing.
Fair.
It's a consistency thing. I mean, it's the way I look at a kalk stir is a way is perfect for a large reefer.
Yeah.
It's perfect for a large reefer. Somebody that don't want to do anything to it. It's perfect for you.
Exactly.
But I've had and that's okay. Listen, if you're getting good results by using a kalk stir, do a kalk stir. But if you want super consistency like we have and what I thrive for, and I do not steer away from because I'm so retentive about my pH and my system ever since I've seen the results that I can get from having a consistent pH, then do the method the way I do it. I mean, a kalk stir can cause major problems, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a pretty big company out there that I know that uses kalk stirs because they already owned them and they didn't want to not continue to use their investment. And I get that. But at the same time, as a storefront, sow it used and stop being lazy. Because they came to me and said, I don't understand why my, about every 4 or 5 days, the pH just does not get stable, doesn't stay stabilized at nighttime. And I'm like,
losing potency.
You're using a kalk stir. I told you what the problem was months and months ago. And I said, when I told you were going to have problems with it, don't bother me with your issues.
I had a cool idea. I don't know practically how well this worked, but I was thinking about this because the thing is, it loses potency, over time, right? So that's why, every 10 or so days, I mean, maybe it's less. I don't have a pH probe in there. That's just my blind estimation of adding an extra scoop in there. But I was talking to a buddy about this one, potentially doing a little servo with a little auger that just adds a little bit of kelp into it every day to keep it fresh and topped off. I'm like,
An
this could
automatic
be a
ice
cool, yeah, basically, but topping off kelp to the reactor. I'm like, this could be a cool way to automate it and keep the
Very
potency
cool.
up. Yeah, so I've had all these
Well,
ideas I got to play with.
I like that, but then you got to figure out how you can make sure that when that little thing spins and dumps the caulk like fish food,
Hmm. Yeah.
dumps it into the reservoir, you still have to be able to seal that back up. So if you could shut down at that particular point in time,
Hmm.
opens up a little sealed opening,
Yeah.
it dumps some caulk into it, then it seals it back
I mean,
up. That'd be the
if
perfect thing for the truly lazy ass reefer.
yeah, exactly, which is great. I will happily spend hours building and doing it to save me 2 minutes every
You got
few
to put
days.
a patent on that thing, bro. If you make
Yeah.
it, you invent it, and you put a patent on it, make
But
sure you make a big ass one for me.
I will do that. But yeah, I've been playing with this idea. But you could just have like a hole tapped and have a little funnel and it more or less sealed. I mean, it won't be 100%, but it'll be for the most part sealed. And I think that would work. Anyways, so this is something I
I
might.
think it would.
Yeah,
I like the way your brain works because that's something that I've been trying to figure out too. Is how do you keep the thing stirred? But honestly, a 55-gallon drum, we do it. Over the summertime, that 55-gallon drum lasts us for an entire week.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
fair.
still not even fully emptied. And then there's this time of year where you had the beginning of October, and you got this up and down and up and down. And I've learned over the years I need to watch the dew points of
Yeah.
the weather because we're open air. And when
Yeah.
the dew point gets below a certain level, then I
Change
know
your
I'm
vap.
going to be evaporating a lot more water. So then I can bump the calc dosing up and
Mhm.
then reduce my other stuff's dosing, which is, I love it when I can reduce the dosing of the other things I use.
So do you? I'm just thinking out my fancy automation in my head. If you were dosing, like I just estimate my evaporation and just watch the level of my sump and tweak it periodically. But you could have this is the hardcore route. Like if you did use a level sensor and had it just tweak your dosing base to keep the level consistent. And if you're pulling water out selling frags, obviously that's going to mess with things. But it could be a way of like auto adjusting to your evaporation rate
Right. Yeah.
ish.
I found that every
Not
time
recommended for selling frags, but
I had some people that said they were doing my method completely.
Yeah.
And they would come back and say, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, do you have an auto top off? Do you have a level sensor? Do you have this?
Mhm.
Do you have that? I have an ATO. I'm like, well, didn't I say to shut your ATO off, right? Because your
Yeah.
caulk washer was going to be doing the dosing and it was going to take care of your top off for you automatically. And it was going to be a little higher in the morning and it was going to go back to level at nighttime. And then they never told me they had a level sensor.
Yeah.
Well, well, your method doesn't work. I'm like, well, all of a sudden now you tell me you have a level sensor. I'm like, you said you were doing things my way. After I told you have nothing else that's controlling your water level, and only your caulk washer is doing your dosing through your dosing pump, please leave me alone because you lied to me when you didn't tell me all this stuff. And then you're saying my method doesn't work when it's your own problem. And that's the thing that really irritates me about the industry nowadays is that, if I teach somebody how to use the method and they don't tell me everything about what they're using on their system, they blame me and bash me for, oh, your method doesn't work. Your method doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, they don't even know
I'm just-
important details of what's happening. It's not the full picture.
I mean, I asked you all the questions that I needed to ask you, and you neglected to tell me all of the details that I asked for. So you're the idiot, and
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sound like a jerk, but I've been doing this for so long, and I help so many people that it's notorious that the 1 out of 50 people that does it and bitches at me out that says it doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
is the guy that didn't tell me all the information that I asked for.
Yep.
And then I block them and I say, don't bother me ever again. You're wasting a lot of my time. I'm sitting here pulling my hair out as to why you can't get this to work. And everybody else I teach to get to work has no problems with it.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't be at 1,000 different places. I can only ask the right questions. And if I don't
true.
get the right answers, it's not going to work.
It's all skewed.
It's
It's just
simple. It's really simple. It's I pull my hair out some days. There's days I had this one guy and it was like literally 6 months. And I asked him the question over and over and over again. And he kept telling me, no, 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 no. And then finally he came clean with me. I blocked him. I deleted everything that I ever had with him. And then he still figured out a way. He called my landline. And I'm like, what do you want from me? Leave me alone. Block. He called me from another number. I'm really sorry, man. I'm like, no, you wasted 6 months weekly chats of my life when you did this shit on purpose. You're an idiot. You're a jerk. Leave me alone. You're the guy that's the keyboard warrior back there bashing me when you were the idiot that didn't do the work. Go bash me some more now because I blocked you because you were an idiot. You know what? I'm a big boy. I can take it.
It's kind of funny hearing it, but yeah, I would be bitter too. You're helping somebody and they just ignore what you're doing, but then keep bugging you. It is funny though, but I know, right? Because you're spending all the time helping somebody and they're just ignoring what you're telling them, but still bugging you constantly anyways.
You know, I want to help people as much as I can. I mean, I'm not out here to see somebody fail. If they have a legitimate question, you know, I mean, I care about the animals. You know, even if I didn't produce the animal here on our farm, or I didn't sell the store that they bought the animal from, it's an animal. I don't care where it came from. If somebody really truly wants to keep these animals alive and thriving and not just surviving and growing and doing well, and I can help them do it, I will do everything I can to help them as long as they give me the tools to make that happen.
Yep.
And if they can't give me the tools to make that happen, it's not my fault.
Well, then you can't help them. So
you're right. There's just no helping them. And, you know, unfortunately, that is the way it is with some of them. And my opinion is, you know, they should sell their aquarium and go get a dog or a cat because they're a hell of a lot easier to take care of.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yep.
So, any more questions?
I don't know. Maybe if I miss any questions in the chat, please ask them again, and we will get to them. So I don't know. So like in my system, I'm doing the special blend of everything method of calc and dosing the nasties and calcium reactor. You know what? You're just shaking your head at me. You're like, why are you complicating it? I still find it hard to see how you can keep up all of your demand with just calc in your system. I still find that hard to wrap my head around because I'm like, okay, I'm still dosing, you know, so much from the calcium reactor and so much of the hydroxides on top of my evaporation.
I have gotten so many people dialed in with straight kalkwasser where they're keeping their pH at their valley at 8.22 to 8.25, and their peak at the day is like anywhere from like 8.34 to 8.37, and their average is 8.29, 8.3. To me, that's a 100% success for a hobbyist.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of them that get to that point, and they're so ecstatic about the results that they've gotten that they want more. And then they start asking me how to use the other hydroxides, and I tell them no. And now we've got our infamous chemist on the forums talking about dosing sodium hydroxide now, and he's teaching people how to use sodium hydroxide. And I'm just like, you know, he's a chemist, man. You know what? Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You're going to nuke your tank. And sure enough, half these people that want more, and I refuse to teach them how to use the stuff because I know the dangers of it. They get complacent after they learn how to use it. They get complacent, and then they freaking nuke their entire aquarium because they wanted more when I told them they're doing great.
Getting greedy with the pH.
Then you got this guy with a PhD or a doctorate that's a freaking expert in chemistry that doesn't understand the biology of a reef aquarium and the interactions between what happens with it. And he's teaching people how to use this crap. It's just ridiculous to me. You know, just if you can't keep an aquarium alive yourself, don't tell somebody how to use the stuff in their aquarium because it's ridiculous. Yeah.
No, fair points, and I'm pretty sure I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm pretty sure I've read that. Mitch, you deleted your question.
I got no sympathy for somebody like that. Yeah. You know, I got no sympathy for somebody that wants to be, you know, overzealous and think that they can do better in their aquarium and use this nasty, nasty stuff that shouldn't be used. Okay, Devin, you've been doing it for a while, and I'm sure
I haven't shared it though.
Good, thank you.
I've been too hesitant to do it. I'm like, no.
Too many people that have tried it when I told them not to, and the bad results that have come through, and I get these messages, man, I wish I would have listened to you.
Mhm.
I had like over $15,000 worth of coral in my aquarium, and I'm
Oof.
lucky to have, $1,000 worth of that coral still living because I didn't listen to you.
Mhm.
Anybody out there that wants to achieve higher than an 8.22, 8.25 valley in your pH dosing kalkwasser, you want to achieve higher than that, I'm not your man. You should be fine with getting your pH to that point there by
If it's
dosing
8 and
kalkwasser.
higher, you should be happy. That's all that matters.
I,
You're-
I don't like 8 either because that's just too low. Even 8.1 is too low for me because natural seawater, anywhere from 8.25 to 8.3. So
for
that's
the
why I
low,
say as long as you're, huh?
as long as my low doesn't go below 8, I'm happy. Depends on what I'm
Yeah,
dosing, but
I don't want mine going below 8.25. I've
that's
gotten a
fair.
lot more relaxed with
Yeah.
mine. I was so gung ho on the 8.29 for over 2 years.
Yeah.
And, I had one of my big hydroxide containers, the nasty stuff, run
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
And there was a lot going on, and I noticed things weren't staying where they were supposed to. And
Yep.
I was getting down to as low as like 8.21. And I'm looking at that system going, I know I got to mix up another batch. I know it's going to take me an hour and a half just to mix the shit because it's so dangerous. I can't do it today. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll do it the next day. Oh, I'll do it the next day. And, and a week goes by and I'm running at 8.21 in the morning and my average was still running at 8.27.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the tank going, wow, the corals still look amazing. So I got a lot more relaxed with it, and that's what everybody
Complacency is
should
trouble
be.
with some stuff, but so if I don't dose the nasties, I definitely go under 8. Which thank you for the reminder because I need to mix some more. I know it was pretty dang low when I looked a day or two ago, so I might even
I
be up.
hope you, I hope you glove up, suit up, mask up, all that crap.
Walter White style, buddy. Outside, mask, goggles, gloves. Yeah, I know. It's nasty. This is why I don't advise
My,
people use it.
my employees call me the mad scientist when they see me walking around with their gear on.
Yep, just Walter White style. That's all I can say.
I
Okay,
did melt a 5-gallon bucket one day.
really? Dang.
I don't know what. I got a phone call right after I dumped the crap into the bucket, and I didn't. I never put the full amount of water in the bucket,
Oh.
and I always take the bucket because I do mix a pretty concentrated solution.
Hmm.
And I have back in my teen years, my younger years, I had plenty of keg tubs in a 5-gallon bucket with fits perfectly inside of a keg tub, and I put a couple of bricks in the bottom of it to keep the bucket up, and I put a hose in it and run cold water in the keg tub, and then this is what this was the breaking point for me, and I don't mix it at all unless when I melted the 5-gallon bucket, I put it inside the
Yeah.
keg tub with running water, and then I pour the shit in. That way, if I get
Yeah.
a phone call or something that I have to attend to, I don't melt buckets and worry about my employees stepping in
Sketchy. Sketchy. Yeah. No,
It's not the way
polypropylene or
guys.
whatever it is the only ones I'll use. Glass or that. Okay.
It'll
Question.
still melt it.
It gets hot.
Glass won't melt glass, but yeah.
Yeah. Glass mixer and then polypropylene. Okay, question in the chat from Mitch. Under Chris's method, at what point does calcium radium slow down? I get his method works, but I'd personally worry about calcium overdose. I'm trying to understand the red line.
Okay, this has been a huge question. It's been more of a question as more and more people get into using the method and using kalkwasser. When you have a newer system that's kind of immature, and you have and I hope people don't take this the wrong way. I would say 80% of the tanks that are out there right now, people think they're mature and they're frag tanks. They're not mature. If you have a bunch of frags in your aquarium and you think it's a mature aquarium because you got frags an inch apart and it's packed full, it's packed tight, you got problems coming down the road for one. And two, your demand for calcium is not going to be nearly what it's going to be in the future as your corals grow in. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by a mature aquarium is, do you have colonies? And I'm not talking about a frag that you
That's not a colony.
This big.
That's a colony.
About a colony. And that to me is, something the size of a of a
At least a base
baseball
minimum
is
softball.
a miniature colony. Even a racquetball can be considered a miniature colony to me.
Eh,
You know, back in the day,
that's a
we
big
called
frag.
them frags.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big frag. I still call them big frags. You know, I love it when say, I got my colony of my home wrecker. It's got 3 branches on it. I'm gonna bust the frag
Oh,
off.
it drives
Anybody
me.
wanna buy it from me?
It drives me nuts when people are like, "Oh, this is a colony." I see it's like that big. I'm like, "That is not a colony." I'm like, "That's a branch."
But it's not their fault, Devin. It's not their fault, and
Tainted.
it's the industry's fault because it's misinformation given that's considered truth. You know, it's just like
Frag,
everything nowadays.
2 branches, colony.
Yes, exactly. Now I have a colony of green slimer that is, you know, it's like this big, and all it is one big branch going this way, one big branch going this way, and 3 or 4 branches coming off of it. That's a colony. Yep. That's not a frag.
That's
but fair. That's a staghorn. That's the difference, you know?
Yep.
But, you know, the industry itself needs to educate the hobbyists better. And, you know, it makes me sad that hobbyists think they have something that they don't. And, you know, it makes me sad that when people buy these expensive, you know, $1,000 acro frags, these $500, even $100 acro frags, that they're so gung-ho about this thing getting a second, third, and fourth branch on it that they think that they have a freaking colony. And it's a good idea to break that branch off of there. Hey, you want to? I'll break my colony apart and sell you a frag of it, dude. Don't touch that damn thing. If you spend a lot of money on it, it's not even mature. It's still a freaking baby. Let it grow into a little golf ball that's got 5, 6, 7 branches on it, and even then, it's just a big frag. You know, at that point, breaking it might not kill it. But I've seen so many people so disappointed that they spent all this money on these beautiful corals that I think are so overpriced, and then they get a second, third, and fourth branch on it. They frag it and piss the thing off, and the whole thing melts on them. And the money they sold the frag for didn't even pay for the frag that they initially had, and they have to go back out and buy another one from somebody. It's like, no, let the tank grow, man. It's not a business. It's not a freaking business. If you're getting in this to sell corals, you got a long way to go, because I learned the hard way when I started ACI Aquaculture. I thought I could farm corals and make a living doing it. Well, guess what? I've been doing it for 16 years, and my farm still doesn't pay my bills. My farm still sucks me dry. And if I didn't have wild import corals, I wouldn't be in business as a coral farmer unless I sold retail. And I don't want to sell retail. I want to do this on a big scale. I want to do it commercially, because it hasn't been done really profitably. And I know that here very soon, when the new farm it's maturing, it's really maturing. I'm going to have, I got the jester court coming out, adding to the Fimbrophilia para and coral.
Nice.
We have the jesters, the court jester. We have the executioner. We have the princess is getting close to being ready to go again. The king's getting ready to close to being ready to go.
These are all your fancy hammers, right? We're talking about?
Yes. The royal court.
I'm like, I don't remember the jesters. These must be new. It was like princess and king. There's a few others when I was there. I don't remember the executioner in these. These are new additions.
Oh, wait until
or you're hiding them on me.
The executioner is probably not as good as the princess. I have to keep, you know, somebody told me that the executioner needs to be the best looking one of them all. And I'm like, no, the princess needs to be the best looking one of them all, because it's the king's daughter, and she's the most beautiful thing in the kingdom. So that's why we named the princess, which now I got people calling Princess Hologram. I'm like, whatever, I don't give a shit. You know, I'm so sick and tired of it. I can farm a coral and have lineage on it, and people put their own stupid names on it now. It's such a wild, wild west, you know. It doesn't matter all the hard work that I put into growing a coral and the lineage I have. It's, you know, I'm going to put my own name on it. It's like, you know,
I know.
Whatever.
Yep.
I know. I know what I have. I know what we've done. And, you know, the people that respect what we do call it by what it really is. But everybody's out for themselves in the industry. We could go on about that for hours, Devin, and I really don't want to talk about that because I'll just get irritated.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
The royal court will be released, unfortunately, not before the holidays.
The year's almost over.
What's that?
It's November 1st. The year's almost over. It'll be released early 2024.
It will be. We will probably have the entire court being released again. And we're learning really quickly that we need a lot more of the mother colonies to grow
Mm-hmm.
out, they grow very quick for
Yeah.
us. I mean, we take single polyps, and like when I frag down the the king, the queen, the princess, and the prince. I still have plenty of the prince. I guess the prince of darkness, the black one. You
It's
either love it or you hate it.
okay. So black corals are like you're a hardcore and you've been in a while and you like stuff that's different. The majority of people just want bright and colorful. So I understand that one. It's definitely more niche.
Yeah, no, it is. And
Yeah.
I probably got about 600 polyps of that ready to go.
Nice.
And the price when we release it is going to go way down on that one because I need to make some room.
Yeah.
It's growing really quickly for me. But when we originally fragged up the princess, the king, and the queen, we put single polyps back on tiles, and now that was back in February, March. Each one of those is about 10 to 15 polyps.
Nice.
And so I want to wait till they're good 20, which should probably be January, February.
Couple months. Nice.
I guess. And then I can expand the amount of mother colonies I have of each of them so that I'm hoping that soon I'll be able to keep them on the market.
Gonna need more tanks? More tanks? Let's keep on expanding. I know.
I mean,
Okay.
soon the Royal Court of Hammers is going to take up 1,000 gallons, 12 foot.
Oh yeah, it's a good chunk of that big system you had there. But I mean, they're pretty, and I bet you they're awesome sellers. So it's probably
They are
a good one. Okay.
When they go on the market, they're gone within days or a week. So.
Yep. Okay.
What are you drinking, Devin?
I am drinking rum.
Rum.
Yeah,
I'm at the farm, so I got Chick-fil-A.
Oh, that's fair. This is like very delicious sipping rum from Bamboo Rum. Just in case anyone else wants to try it.
That rum.
It's good.
I know that rum.
So smooth.
Very good. Very tasty.
So smooth. So tasty. No sugary mix needed. Just exactly. Okay. Mitch's question. So what's the calcium level? I love this point because the level is the danger in understanding this. So how high is too high a calcium? That probably sums it up. In your opinion, can you go too high? And if so, what is that point?
Do not go over 550.
What happens if you do?
You can start to see some issues. You won't probably have any issues at 550.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're going to really start seeing your issues is right around between 6 and 620. You will start seeing STN on acros. You'll start seeing polyps not opening on LPS corals. If it's such a gradual thing, it might not happen until it gets even higher than that. But you don't want to play with that number. I mean, that's a macro that you really got to make sure stays below the 550 mark. I mean,
Okay.
I don't like 550 at all. I mean, I've had some people that have told me because their tank was not mature enough to be dosing the amount of kalkwasser that they were dosing. And I told them that if they wanted to save the money with the method, to stop using 2-part and to spend the money you'd be spending on the 2-part over a year or 2 years or whatever on a calcium reactor.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, you're able to get the alkalinity value that you need to keep your alkalinity stable, but you will not be able to achieve your pH level because you're dosing too much kalkwasser. But by doing the kalkwasser, you're still keeping it from suppressing as far as it would without the kalkwasser. So because your tank is immature, you can use the method, but you have to worry about your calcium level going too high. If you have to reduce the amount of kalkwasser you're dosing because your calcium level is rising too much, then you're going to have to worry about your alkalinity falling out too far. So that's why I say to put your calcium reactor in there, because they're not really a calcium reactor. I mean, they're an alkalinity reactor. I mean, it's
calcium side benefit
here. You know, just be strict.
It's true. Why do they call it a calcium reactor? It is mainly elk, but you get calcium. If you add magnesium chips, then you get meg too. But
do you really get magnesium out of it? I mean,
I just keep adding more mag rocks, so I get some out of it. But yes, I periodically dose it every few months.
Right. The magnesium that we use is magnesium is dolomite.
Mhm.
And dolomite will dissolve, but the pH of your calcium reactor should probably be at least at the highest 6.5. And you really should be probably down into the 5.5 range to get any real melting of dolomite.
Fair.
But then when you're doing that,
That's a
then
lot of depression.
you're turning your calcium reactor media, the aragonite that you have in there, into mush. And it
Yep.
just doesn't do as good of a job. And you get this, all of a sudden you think that you still have a lot of reactor media in there, and then all of a sudden one day it just collapses, and you're just like, what happened to it all?
Yep.
Well, your pH was too low in your reactor. So
Mush.
if you're worried about the magnesium, I don't worry about my magnesium, but I keep my reactors at 6.5, and I have to dose magnesium chloride and magnesium sulfate. I use a mixture about every month, and I bump it. It goes down 50 points. I bump it back up 50 points. And I don't gradually take my magnesium level from 1300 or 1350 to 1350 or 1400.
I dump it a ton at once.
Dump it in.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you don't have to worry about with magnesium. It's not going to hurt anything. You can dump the whole amount in to get the level where you need to be, and it's not going to affect anything. You can't do that with calcium. That would be a major problem.
Okay.
If you go up 20 points in a shot with calcium, you're doing okay. You go up 50 points with calcium, you might see some problems with your corals not being
That's
too
fair.
happy, or some FTN or RTN happening.
I've been fairly loose with it, but I'm sure it's probably caused issues in the past. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't go up like 100 points, but if I'm like 50 points, I'm like, eh.
You play with fire, but
I do that.
I don't recommend the average reefer do it. You're
That's
not
fair.
an average reefer, so
That's fair.
You've been doing this a lot longer.
Okay, full disclosure,
Question.
I will make a beaker and dump in half, and then dump in some like 4 or 5 hours later. Like I will spread it up somewhat. So okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you do it that way, that's okay. I mean, if mine really gets slow, like back when I was just doing the kalkwasser and the calcium reactor, my calcium reactors weren't running at all, and my corals were growing like weeds, and my calcium ended up going down to like 305, 299, and that's when I started scratching my head, going, "This is not going to be good if I keep letting this go down." And getting the calcium level to go back up for me was like, okay, damn, I just put in one system 10 kilograms of calcium chloride, and it's only at 350.
Yeah.
So I got to add another 10 kilograms of this stuff. Like,
okay, that's a lot.
If your calcium level continues to rise because you're doing the method in its fullest way, like I have been talking about for all these years, I recommend, like I said, get yourself a calcium reactor, and then reduce your dosage of kalkwasser. It will keep your pH from suppressing all the way down to where it would normally, but it will not keep it at the level where your system's going to be, running above 8.3 during the daytime, which is your ultimate goal. But your system's still immature, so as your system matures, the demand for calcium is going to continue to get greater, and then you're going to be able to eventually eliminate any other supplementation for alkalinity, and you'll be able to utilize just your kalkwasser.
Okay, so
the calcium reactor.
Here's my question on that one. Okay, you said with calcium reactor, because with calc you can dose as much as you evaporate, and after that you're going to be messing with salinity as stuff rises.
Correct.
So, you're a bit of a difference because you have a farm and lots of surface area and stuff, so you probably evaporate a ton. But for like an average reefer, if they're maxing out as much as they're evaporating with their calc, and they're still not keeping up, so your advice to them would be to use a calcium reactor to fill in the gap.
For the okay, was Mitch's question they're not keeping up, or the calcium's going too high?
His was too high. But you're saying that's because, he does have a tank full of colonies that's not sucking as much calcium, so use a calcium reactor.
Correct.
Now, if someone's dosing as much as they're evaporating with the Chris Meckley method, and their elk and stuff is still dropping, do you recommend they two-part, the calcium reactor? What do you recommend they do to fill in the gap of the difference?
I recommend the calcium reactor. Here's the reason why. I had a guy that was awesome. In the beginning, he was a little squirrely, but he he started dosing the calc, and this is probably almost 2 years ago. And his tank, as it matured, he had the same issues that other people had when their calcium level was rising. And I explained it to him. You can do an alkalinity buffer, but I don't recommend it because you could turn your, because the alkalinity buffers that we're using aren't necessarily balanced alkalinity, but and that could cause a reaction in your system that could turn your sand into a brick. So what ended up happening was the dude ended up turning the sand into a brick. And I said, I told you that was going to happen. And he then bought a calcium reactor, but he upgraded his aquarium at the same time and put brand new sand in. And we put the calcium reactor on. Everything has been just beautiful, dialed in.
Nice.
And he was one of those examples where he was dosing the kalkwasser method. The calcium was rising up, and he was doing 50% water changes once a month and doing 10% water changes basically weekly, so that he kept it at a good level. And I actually had Chris formulate him a salt with a lower calcium level in it, and sent him special mixes of salt that had lower levels, just so he could make sure he got it correct.
Luxury service.
So it was great. And it worked out perfect for him. Nice. And then he had to start using the real formulate reef that Chris puts on the market, because his demand for his calcium ended up being exactly the problem, where his calcium was falling. And so then his calcium reactor really helped him a lot. But then he still had a problem with calcium still falling. So he ended up, I just said at that point, get Chris's, Captivate Aquaculture's calcium chloride. You can do either liquid or you can do the dry. And if you're not needing a whole lot of it, just get the pre-mixed liquid and dose it, put it on a dosing pump, and use your Trident to tell you where your calcium level is, and keep it at 400 or 390. And you'll use probably a liter here and a liter there, and he's only using like a liter every 6 months. And it's like, wow, how can you beat that? I'm like, this guy's like spending,
it's next to nothing.
Spending like $40 a month maintaining his alkalinity, his calcium, and magnesium. And it's like, he said, God, this is not a money pit anymore. He's like, all this stupid equipment was the money pit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm a gear junkie. It's addicting, so I still buy the equipment. I like to play with everything. Okay, personal question. Dosing the nasties, does that mess with the balance of things over time?
Depends.
Like, because in mine, I do the hydroxides, I do the kalkwasser, I do the calcium reactor. But I wonder, over time, is dosing the hydroxides, like sodium hydroxide, is that messing with the balance of stuff in the tank over time? If I'm slacking on
chemical reactions that happen inside, basically there's nothing that can happen unless there's a really true imbalance of carbonates. Carbonates can mess up things, and that's where I was talking about dosing kalkwasser and then dosing carbonates. Yeah. When you have a big imbalance of carbonates, that's when the brick forms in your sand.
So
your pores and
I've never personally had like the brick sand bed, but I've heard about it a lot of times. So this interests me. Okay, sorry, carry on.
So sodium carbonate over time can really, will cause a brick. Yeah. I've seen it too many times. I've seen it in big tanks, I've seen it in little tanks, and especially with somebody using kalkwasser and just sodium carbonate. Yeah. It'll create a brick really fast.
If they use bicarb, do they still get the brick? Is it like carbonate only, or it's just a buildup over time with the sodium?
It's a totally different reaction.
Good to know.
I guess it probably can happen. I never really looked into that aspect of it. I can ask Chris, and he can do the math on it, and he can tell me, anytime. But it's possible, but is it as likely? No.
Okay, so it's more you're dosing sodium carbonate, you're dosing, calcium carbonate. All these carbonates build up, and eventually that's what bricks it.
Well, it's a lot more complicated than that, and I'm not a chemist, so I don't want to explain it because I'll get crucified by all the so-called chemistry experts that are listening to all of this right now.
No, that's fair.
Or we'll eventually listen to it. Put it that way.
Eventually, one day, they will, and they'll chime in. Okay, Niagara Fire Corals. Are you dosing kelp 24/7? Okay, do you dose 24/7 all the time, or just at night for the dips?
No, I just dose by pH.
So I dose mine at night to level up my dips. You dose yours based on
My
pH, and some dose
Yes.
24/7. Okay.
Sure. I mean, you can dose kalkwash for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you're never going to achieve an average pH like I do. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just not possible because there's too many variables involved with it. And there's too many variables that you cannot explain because every system's different.
See, this is the thing that still gets me. If I dose just on pH, I would be dosing more than I evaporate, and I'd have to like up the calcium reactor to like compensate. So you got to find that balance.
Well, that's because you have your pH set point too high. That's why I say to people that if you're going to dose it by pH like I do it, you need to start dosing your kalkwasser with what your average pH is. You want that to be your value the first night. So this happens continuously. If you're dosing by pH and you want to get your peak so that you match your evaporation, you might not get to an 8.29 like I do.
Yeah.
But you could get to the 8.22, the 8.25, which will be way better than 8.0.
True. So you're saying if you're 8 to 8.3, then you want to set your value as 8.15 and dose to that, like kind of your average. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Like I had one guy that was valuing out at 7.8, and he was peaking at 8.15.
Yeah.
And then he went to the apex, and he told me what his average was. But he never went to the hour or the daily. He was doing the weekly, and I'm like,
I guess in theory that should level out, but maybe it doesn't.
Please.
Yeah.
You got to know what your daily average is. Once you know what your daily average is, you program your dose pump or your whatever you're programming, your pH controller that's going to control your dosing. You program that to start dosing kalkwasser at that average for that 24-hour period of time. So if you're saturated properly and your dosage is set properly, your pH will not fall below that set point.
Yeah.
And then the next day, your average will be higher.
And just like bump it as you get rid of the...
And you step it slowly up. And then when you get to the point where say it's at 8.2, 8.22, 8.25, and you cannot get it to go above that point, you're done. If you dose more, because the programming is double the dosage amounts, because you're only going to be dosing at the suppressed period, which is at nighttime. Yeah. You can overdose your tank if you're not mindful of keeping on bumping that pH average up, and it keeps going too high. And as soon as you start seeing it dose more than your evaporation, okay, it's time to back that pH point down, but you still dosed your exact evaporation in the period of time when your pH was suppressed.
That's basically what I do with the calcium reactor, or not the calcium reactor, the calc reactor. Essentially the same thing, but just slightly less potent.
It works. I mean, I just, for me,
I'll get back on the auger project for us. There's good potential here. My RO come out 10 pH after mixing salt, going down 8.5. Is this normal? Because I keep it in a closed lid on water. My RO come out at 10 pH. You have 10 pH from your reverse osmosis? That's high. After mixing, mixing salt 8.5.
I've ever checked the pH of my reverse osmosis water.
Yeah, I never have either. Okay.
I just know that my calcium in my kalkwasser, when the pH, when the RO water goes into the kalkwasser, it goes up to 12.44 or something.
Yeah. Okay. Just because you're talking about keeping the lid closed on the water, so with calcium, kalkwasser, it will react with the air around it. So you do want to keep a lid on whatever container that you're dosing from. Obviously, there needs to be a tiny bit of a gap. Otherwise, it'll create like a vacuum. But for the most part, if you just have something covering it, it's going to minimize interaction with air and keep the pH higher for longer. If you don't have a lid on it, it's going to interact with the atmosphere, and eventually it's going to start, absorbing some of that CO2 and lower the pH of it. So you do want to keep it covered.
Calcium carbonate is what it'll do. You get a calcium carbonate film on the surface, and basically just wasted your entire calc vessel, because eventually all the kalkwasser will react with the CO2 in the atmosphere, and you'll have at the bottom of your container, it'll still be white. It'll look like kalkwasser, but it is calcium carbonate at that point.
If you get that film on the top of the water, does it minimize the interaction because it's kind of like a layer, or does it?
It does.
Yeah, I figured it would like help a little bit, but
that's why I always say the vessel that you're using, if you can't seal it and put a CO2 scrubber on it with a John Guest fitting to allow the displacement.
That's a good idea.
You can get it works amazing.
I never thought about a CO2 scrubber on my calc reactor.
Nice. You can. If you take it,
why not?
If you have a sealed calc vessel, a completely sealed up calc vessel, and you put a John Guest fitting in it, and you put the RO tubing in, and it's sealed, and you take one of those RO canisters and put CO2 scrubbing media in it, and connect that to the John Guest fitting going into your vessel, and make sure that it's filled all the way to the top. As soon as it starts pulling water from there, it'll pull air in through the CO2 scrubbing media and remove the CO2 going into the vessel, which will not allow it to react and turn it into calcium carbonate, which will keep your pH stabilized.
I like it. I have I have the vast rium on my tank, but it has that little cone in the middle and a thing around it. If I 3D print like a little donut ring, I can make a little hole through the pH port and basically put a tiny CO2 scrubber. I'm gonna try that. That's good. Yeah, I like that.
It'll work.
Never thought of that.
It'll work.
I'm curious.
But the other thing that I've told people to do, and I just on with Mark Levinson a little over a year ago, and one of the things I learned, because that was a problem for us, was the CO2 interaction. I put in the vessels that we use, I use the biggest piece of styrofoam I can possibly use
for the top
to float on the surface that I can draw. I can put my effluent line drawing from the surface of the liquid, the solution.
That's a good idea.
And I have a gap in some of them that's like this big. I can't put a bigger piece of styrofoam in, so I'm like, okay.
Well, the bins taper if you're using a big one.
Yes, and they're the ones that are my biggest problem children, because I have some of these 55-gallon barrels were used for, I think, olives or peppers, and they have this taper comes up, and I can put a piece of styrofoam in that's this big when the main body is this big. So it's unfortunate that I don't have a way to cover more surface area of the water.
Cut off that top. Get bust out the saw.
Yeah. Then I don't have 55 gallons, and then I got to worry about filling it up more than once a week or twice a week. And
that's fair. Just take off the top inch.
Reefer, but
well,
I need to minimize my workload. Put it that way.
That's fair. I joke that I'm a lazy reefer, but I just like automating stuff. Like I will happily spend freaking 5 hours automating something, even though it saves me 5 minutes. I always joke about being lazy, but the automation stuff I find fun. Okay, I have a question. What is your opinion on the whole calc slurry thing? Dun, dun, dun. No comment? No, don't do it. Bad, nasty.
Do it at your own risk. Do it at your own risk.
Fair.
I don't want to hear any problems. I know so many people that don't do it anymore because I told them what was going to happen, and it happened.
That's fair.
Don't do it.
I always tell people, if you do water changes, you're probably fine. If you never do them, eventually it's going to bite you. That's kind of my advice I give on it, but I was just curious.
Sure.
The nasties, calc's not pure. There's nasties, and it'll eventually bite you. But if you do big water changes, it might never bite you. If you never do water changes, it'll eventually get you.
I mean, we have to deal with aluminum as a byproduct, something that's found in even the best kalkwassers on the market. The way you're not going to get any aluminum in your kalkwassers if you're buying AES grade, which is purified so much that it is just straight up pure kalkwasser. There's no contaminants. There's nothing left. When you put, I think it's AES grade. I forget what I was told. It's 5.8 grams will dissolve in a gallon, and you will have crystal clear. You put 6 grams in, and you'll have a tiny bit of sediment at the bottom.
It's not funny, that tiny little bit.
Zero aluminum, zero contaminants. Nothing will be in there but straight kalkwasser. That's just been so refined that nobody can afford it. I mean, military and hospitals, I don't freaking know. I mean,
yeah.
AES grade
so
purity kalkwasser. Go ahead.
the soda lime pellets that I use for CO2 scrubber, well, I was using, not at the moment, but they're basically made for dumping in anesthesia machines for like vets and hospitals. I buy those because I can buy a 5 gallon container of it.
Yeah.
But even that makes a big difference. Like taking that off my skimmer, definitely see a drop of it. And then I had my skimmer off for a few days. And that was another massive drop. It's like every little piece, just those incremental. But pH is logarithmic, so it's
people need to do to help their pH before they start messing around with anything but kalkwasser. There's so many things that are out there. I mean, you want to add more kalkwasser to your system, but you don't have enough evaporation. Guess what?
Do you
Walmart sells dirt cheap $10 fans that you can replace every 6 months if they get fried. That you blow over your sump and you double your evaporation just like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that you can do to help evaporate more water in your home that people don't think about. Just cheap $10 fans will do it for you, and you'd be amazed at what a cheap $10 fan will evaporate out of your aquarium. And I had one guy that was just like so frustrated, and I said, "Go buy. You got a big tank." I said, "Buy 3 or 4 of these cheap fans and blow them over your sump."
Do you know what's funny?
He's the happiest guy right now, Reefy, because it got him to the point where he evaporates enough water that he's even able to get to 8.29 as his set point on his pH.
So,
and it works.
Okay. So this is one that made me laugh. Ryan Chummingham's Reef, Ryan Cunningham, I had him on last week, but I remember about a year ago I had him on. I'm like, he has so many corals in his tank. I was like, how the F can you dose so much? Like, how do you have enough evaporation to only dose kalkwasser? So he shows above his tank. He has like tower fans, all this stuff, like zap strap in his hood. He has so much freaking air blowing on his tank to force evaporation so that he can dose more calc. I was like, damn. Like, it makes sense, but it's like, that's crazy.
You know how this day and age everybody wants their aquarium to appease the whole family. It has to be super quiet. You can't have your drain do any gurgling or anything.
I'm in that camp.
You suffocate your damn aquarium. You're suffocating your corals.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I had this guy that had his drain dropped all the way to the floor and went over 6 feet, then back up and then back down into his sump. And I'm like, I bet your tank's pretty quiet, isn't it? He's like, does it make a noise? I'm like, it's suffocated.
Yep.
His valley was like at 7.6. And I'm going, you're damn near acidic, bro.
Dang. Yikes. That's like, scary low.
I can't even believe your corals are even living at 7.6. He's like, well, bro, it needs to be quiet for my wife. I'm like, okay. Let's figure this one out here. How are we gonna fix your problem?
I ended up trying a Bubble King skimmer just because I heard they're like literally the quietest. And it is. It is the quietest skimmer I've ever owned. But it's literally just because they're so freaking quiet. Because I'm obsessed with making my tank as quiet as possible. So I understand that. But I also will use soda lime. I will also use hydroxide. I always use calc. I do so much stuff to like push my pH up. But I'm still obsessed with like a quiet tank. So I feel both sides of the equation.
There's so many different things that can be done. Just be cautious with whatever you're doing.
Agreed.
And if you're a new hobbyist wanting to get a reef aquarium and you've never taken care of a coral before a day in your life, do not go to a fish store and listen to them and what they tell you to buy. I'm going to tell you right now what to buy. Buy an aquarium that doesn't have a drill, hole in it, doesn't have an overflow, doesn't have a sump.
Nice little all-in-one.
Buy a tank, 55 gallon. Go to Home Depot and buy a high output T5 lamp. Go back to the store and buy some ATI Blue Pluses. And at the same time, while you're at that store, buy an AquaClear or Pro Clear filter and put carbon in it. And at the same time, buy yourself a good wave pump. Buy some live rock, buy some live sand, and take your tank home, set it up, put that light system up and everything over top of it, and cycle your aquarium. And then, when you want to go back in and buy your first coral, don't listen to what the store owner tells you unless he's on the same page as you are. Tell him you want to buy a inexpensive soft coral, a colony, not a frag. You want a colony.
Yep.
Because I get so many colonies of soft coral that used to sell like crazy for beginner people that never took care of a coral a day in their life, and now I can barely sell a doggone things. And people need to start out reefing that way. With the basics. I started out that way.
What are your basic soft coral?
Soft corals, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Okay. What are the basic soft corals you'd recommend? Like a Nephia, a toadstool, zoas? Like, what do you recommend?
Corals.
Colts? Yeah.
Cluxums or Cladelias, Campanellas, lobophytums or devil's hands, sarcophyton, toadstools, discosomas, actinodiscus mushrooms, rhodactis mushrooms, sympodium, star polyps, briarium, all the basic stuff that used to be so popular, xenia, uh, start off with something so simple and easy that doesn't require you to learn the water chemistry right away.
That's fair.
You don't need to do all of that right away. You need to be able to feel happy and feel a sense of pride that you have. I'm taking care of these live animals, not this sense of I just spent $5,000 on an aquarium and I can't even keep anything alive. Boo-hoo, woe is me.
You know what?
I don't want to hear any whining and crying about that stuff. It's their own fault because they got sold by a store owner wanting to make money off of them, and they're out of the hobby in a year and a half.
That was a good rant. Anyone that is not into like a reefer loves freaking green star polyps. They're like, it's so bright, it sways in the flow.
I love them.
Yeah, they're great. You're okay. This sounds funny, but Pulsing Xenia, I'm actually tempted to put it in my nano because I love it, but I won't put it in my big tank. But I freaking love how they move on their own. I freaking love it. But I won't put it in my big tanks because it's slightly invasive. But in a nano, I'm like, maybe I'll do that.
I think I used to say, I think I even said it on your stream before, that I can't keep Xenia alive. I think I've said that on yours. I know I've said it on plenty of streams that I can't keep Xenia alive.
But that is one where it depends on the tank. Some tanks, it freaking thrives, and others, it just does nothing. Like
I couldn't keep it alive in any tank.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what tank I had, I could not keep it alive. Wild Xenia, could not keep it alive. And I wouldn't even order it. And then I got a bunch of it in one time and put it in my new soft coral tank, and it did good. And then, Top Shelf Aquatics, I've known them since they opened their doors. I respect those guys a lot. They had an overabundance of it, and I figured, he was like, man, he's like, you can't take any Xenia. He's like, can you buy some Xenia from me so I don't have to, just give it away. Yeah. So I got on this kick where I was buying 50 Xenia frags from him, and literally I don't sell it that well. So it was 50 Xenia frags. I was selling that like every month, and well, all of a sudden they were bringing me 50 Xenia frags every month. Well, he called me up a couple of days ago, and he's like, Chris, how many Xenia do you want this week? And I'm like, I don't want any more Xenia from you ever. I'm like, I have put this stuff, your Xenia, I have put it everywhere, and it is taking over tanks. I'm now trying to get rid of the shit.
Yeah.
And it's only been about a year that I've had their pulsing Xenia. For whatever reason, maybe it's just because it's been in captivity for so long. I can't kill it, and I do sell it. It sells very well. Now I'm taking dead acroporas, and I'm just throwing it on top of it because I got these big mats growing all over the place. So instead of it spreading onto my other corals, I'm throwing big dead acros on it and pulling them out and putting them up for sale. Cheap. Yeah. Beginner corals. Again, if you're new, you want beginner corals. Don't let them talk to you and all this crazy stuff.
So, sidebar, I have a 14-gallon tank that I put on my desk, and I literally have a goal of only easy stuff like maybe rock flowers, maybe Recordia, maybe some, mushrooms, but only easy. Like, I don't want to even have to dose it. Like, we can survive water changes. So I might actually put some pulsing Xenia in there because I kind of miss that a little bit. So.
And it's a small tank, so it's not that big of a deal. It's not like it's hard to get rid of it if you have a small tank like that. When you get a big tank, it can be a nightmare.
It is. Well, because it can spread, right?
Yes.
I got rainbow clove polyps by the tank. I think I might add some of those because they're pretty and easy too.
Fun fact about Xenia.
Yes.
If it's not pulsing, how do you get pulse?
I've always seen it just pulse. I think it's just assuming it's light related, but I'm not sure. What's the secret?
I use it now. I have Xenia in every single one of my systems now, and I've known this for a couple of decades. But Xenia, if it's not pulsing fast, you're iodine deficient.
Interesting.
So I use it as an iodine indicator in an aquarium, and it works so fast. And my manager Daniel didn't believe me because our frag system, this is probably about 2 months ago, had some pulsing Xenia in it. And he came to me, he's like, dude, this stuff's always pulsing. Why isn't it pulsing? And one, I got complacent and I didn't refill my minor and trace dosing bucket.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure it was probably out for maybe a week. And because my ICP test 1 week was like something squirrely. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think about it, and I was busy and I never filled it. Well,
Yeah.
I said, watch, Daniel, watch this. I went and grabbed the Lugals that we use for dipping,
Mm-hmm.
and I put 4 drops around the pulsing xenia, and we have flow kind of going everywhere. And within 20 seconds, it was all going.
Really?
Oh,
Wow.
it was
Just from
amazing.
iodine.
And then,
That's awesome.
yeah, and just those 4 drops, and then as it dissipated through the water column, it slowed down, got slower,
Yeah.
slower, and then it was
Huh.
like pulse, pulse, and he's like, I never heard of that before. So and then I ended up going back to the sump, and I put it was like my dose, if the iodine level's low, I know I have to put about 2 mils of Lugal solution in, and that gets it right to where it's supposed to be. So I squirted 2 mils into the sump, and that would go from the sump all the way to the end of the system, and then the xenia was at the end right before the drain.
Mm-hmm.
And it took it about 15 minutes, and all of a sudden it was just going like crazy. And the next day, still going like crazy, and he couldn't believe it, and it's pretty wild.
You pretty much just made me want xenia again. It's been many years.
Awesome.
So speaking of cheap tanks, the easiest one I've ever seen, the simplest tank, was on a desk by a window lit by natural sunlight with a single power head, and it was basically just rock and xenia, and that was it. Like, if you want a cheap budget tank, that is as cheap and budget as you get, and it still look pretty.
Every single beginner in this, that wants to be in this area, especially a young kid that has to rely on his mother and father to be the financial backing for the aquarium, should not be going into a fish store these days and buying an LED fixture at all. There's no reason for them. If the mother says it's got to be neat and sleek and nice, put a canopy on the damn tank and put your T5 fixture over it. Let your child and parents themselves learn how to be excited about these living animals instead of immediately having this expensive money pit that you know nothing about, that frustrates the hell out of you, that gets you out of the industry. I had
That's fair.
Talked to 7 different stores, and I asked them, these were all stores I knew kept a database from their customer to when they didn't see them anymore. Their average customer in and out of the hobby was 1.5 years, and I was about to puke because of that, because our industry is dead. It will be dead and gone in a very short period of time if we don't start getting people in the industry that stay in the industry. And if the store owners, all they care about is dollars, those new beginners should not
they
be
won't
going
stay in the
to
hobby.
those stores. Exactly.
Yep.
That's my point of this. If you're new and you're listening to this right now and you want an aquarium, you never had one, do exactly like I said, 5 or 10 minutes ago. A cheap aquarium with a ProClear filter, and do water changes only. And then as your corals start to thrive in your aquarium or survive really well, then start dibble-dabbling with, a protein skimmer, dosing something for alkalinity. Maybe try an inexpensive fragment of a hard coral and see if it lives for you.
Yeah.
And then start monitoring your alkalinity and your calcium. But in the beginning, don't confuse yourself by getting all these test kits and all this fancy equipment that is supposedly the best thing since sliced bread when it's the worst thing since sliced bread. It's actually your downfall. It's the reason why people don't stay in the hobby, is because it's too expensive and it's not easy when it comes down to keeping hard corals. Don't let the store employees say that star polyps are garbage. If
they're
walk
pretty.
Into a store and the guy says they're garbage and you don't want them in your aquarium, walk right back out.
They're fluorescent. They look awesome, and you can't kill them if you try. Exactly. They're perfect beginner coral. Perfect.
Exactly.
Yep.
All corals are beautiful.
Oh yeah.
If you go in with a mindset of all corals are beautiful, you will be successful. If you go into it with a mindset that you got to have the next best coral on the market, the newest trend, and this and that, you know what? I could use the money. You can just give me all the money that you want to put into that aquarium, because in 1.5 years, you have wasted 10 times that or 3 times that on killing stuff. And then your heart will ache, your frustrations will be there. You'll feel like a failure. Nobody wants that. This day and age, everybody wants to feel like they're a champion. Everybody wants a participation trophy. Well, you don't get a participation trophy when you're reefing if you buy the most expensive equipment to start off and you never kept an aquarium before in your life.
Yep.
So
So
I ranted way too much about that.
that's
But
fair.
I feel passionate about that because
That's
I'm worried about
it's a good rant.
our industry, man.
Yeah.
I'm really worried about our industry, bud.
No,
Seriously.
at the end of the day, the goal for everyone should be successful because that's what keeps you in the industry. It keeps you, the hobbyist in it long term is being successful, right? So if you're just getting stuff and you fail, you're not going to stay in the hobby. So being successful, keeping these animals alive is win-win for everyone. But like even myself, like I know I do a lot of advanced rabbit holes. So I'm like literally trying to do a tank on my new nano tank, which I'm trying to keep it super simple, basic, as basic as I can, because I'm like, okay, I need to do, back to the basics a little bit, do some more like beginner friendly stuff, not just my crazy stuff. Keep it simple. I did put an ATO on it because I got tired of dumping in a deli cup of RODI every other day. But so I finally had an ATO. But anyways, overall, I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can within reason.
And it really can be simple. I mean,
yeah.
And then once you learn how to take care of these beautiful creatures, and you see them growing, and you feel the sense of accomplishment, and you start learning more about the water chemistry and how to maintain that, and what is important, what's not important.
Mm-hmm.
The sense of accomplishment that you can get. If you're a parent, you see your child happy and not disappointed. This isn't a goldfish that you buy that you win at the fair, that you bring home, and when it dies, you flush it down the toilet and you hurry up and go to the store and buy another one and hope your child doesn't notice that it's different. You can't do that when you're buying corals because they all look different. No matter how much you think they might be the same, when you're talking about the same species, they're all different, and it's noticeable. It can be so much fun, and having young, 10, 11, 12-year-olds getting into this is what we need, and we don't have it. And it's scary, man, because my passion and my love for, these beautiful animals is I feel like it's going to be gone because we're not going to have enough people wanting to even get into the hobby, because the first thing out of everybody's mouth is, oh, you need to buy the radions for over that 55. You need 2 of them. They're $1,000 a piece. I would if I was setting up a tank for my child nowadays and I was told that,
you wouldn't set it up. You're not spending $1,000. Yeah.
What's that?
And so you'd be like, no, you're not getting $1,000 light for your tank.
You should be spending less than $1,000 on the entire setup. I mean, come on. A 55-gallon aquarium is cheap. A 40 breeder is even better because they're just got a great footprint to them. It's so much. There's so many ways you can do it, and learning as you go is better than being told how to do it.
Yeah.
And if you're that person that needs to be told how to do everything, reefing's not for you.
So there was a question earlier, off topic, but before I forget about it, they were asking about MPS corals, and they heard they do better in the cooler seasons, and if there's any like good SPS corals that you have right now, or not SPS, sorry, NPS. So non-photosynthetic, probably like gorgs and that type of stuff. There's something along those lines a while ago, so I'm belated asking it from like 10 minutes ago.
I have some amazing NPS corals that we request because we have a handful of customers that are really trying hard. And I say trying. There's not been anybody showing me any long-term success with NPS corals. And I mean long-term success. I mean more than a year. NPS corals are not for anybody that does not want to really put a lot of time and dedication into keeping something that not many people have had any success with for a year. I had an employee that was all about the NPS corals, and it's difficult for him, and he loves this stuff.
Yeah.
I have another customer that has an NPS customer, and that his customer contacted me, and because we posted some photos of some dendronepthias that had just come in, and he wanted to buy them from me. I said, no, you need to buy them from a local fish store. Where you at? Anyway, got hooked up with my customer. My customer delivered them to his house because he wanted to see this guy's NPS tank. Well, he got one batch of corals. About 3 months later, he got another batch of corals. He went back. He hand delivered them again because he wanted to see how good everything was doing.
Yeah.
Couldn't find any of the corals that he put in there.
Oh no. Oh,
okay,
dang.
He could, but they were all looking really bad. And there's not enough data on what these beautiful animals require, because NPS corals are some of the most beautiful corals out there, in my opinion. Dendronephthias are just spectacular in color.
Yep.
And I think that Ken from Hydrospace has got something really good going on with his, purple sulfur bacteria and all of the other bacterial blends that he produces. Because little does a lot of people know, and I really didn't know this until probably 2 or 3 years ago, that the majority of the main source of food for all corals in the wild is bacteria.
Makes sense.
And there's so many species of bacteria living in the ocean, we'll never know them all. The ocean's so damn big, as we all know, we don't know enough about 2% of it. I mean,
Yep.
Okay, maybe it's 3 now. But, my point being is there's a lot of people trying hard and having somewhat success stories. I know that I've kept gorgonians, non-photosynthetic gorgonians in here for 6 months or more.
Yeah.
But I'm putting in phytoplankton a handful of times a week, and then unfortunately it dies. It's doomed.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about like an LPS type coral, that's a large polyp like a Tubastria or a Dendrophilia or a Planophilia or a Rhizotrochus, which I don't recommend anybody buy because they're 100% illegal. And they do come in illegally. I know that for a fact. But when it comes down to it, those large polyp NPS corals, they can thrive for years in captivity by being fed meatier foods. But I don't know anybody that has long-term success with the Balanophilias and the Rhizotrochus typus longer than about 3 to 5 years, because I think that they're still missing bacteria of some sort that is important for their nutritional value that they're not able to get. But now that Ken's out there with all this crazy stuff he's been doing, I'm curious as to what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to be cool to see. I got a 5-gallon jug of stuff that I'm trying out here from Ken, and I need to call them up and find out exactly how they want me to do it. But it's going to be cool. I'm excited to see what happens.
Let me know how that goes. I'm curious.
I will, for sure.
Like, in a general basis, if anyone was going to do MPS, like in my mind, you need to feed extremely heavy and filter extremely heavy. So it's not for the average reefer. Like, you need, phyto, like, I don't know if you're using like mysis or canalus or small particulate food in the water on a frequent basis, but then you're going to have crazy nutrients. So you need to have some heavy duty filtration. So it is a challenge to give them hope.
It's so funny we're talking about this, Devin, because
I know.
A good friend of mine and a good friend of Jake Adams called me today and had this. He's like, I got a dumb idea. I'm like, why are you calling it a dumb idea? It could be a brilliant idea. And he goes, I have this old freshwater planted tank that I would love to hook up to my, 700-gallon reef tank.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to keep it in another room where my sump is, but I still want to connect it to the main system. But I'm trying to understand how I could feed enough food in that tank without destroying the nutrient level in my big tank. And I said, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I actually theorized about how to do this with somebody that's got a very large system and then somebody that's got a very small tank that they want to hook up to it, but it can still be problematic.
It can, but sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. I want to hear what you have to say.
In my mind, I would have my nano NPS, which would have all of the dosing of foods into it and a very slow overflow that runs through the big system. Like, that's how I would set it up. But, eventually it still might be an issue for the big system depending on how good your filtration is. But, sorry, go ahead.
Both of us almost exactly at the same time brought up Joe Waiula's tank.
Yeah.
His 20,000-gallon reef. And when you go up in the upper part of the tank, if you got privileged enough to go up to see above the whole thing, he's got a 40-gallon breeder sitting there, a 55-gallon tank or 75-gallon tank that's full of Tubastrias. And they breed in there. And they are a problem because they breed so much in there. And it's connected to the 20,000-gallon tank, and he feeds the heck out of that little tank.
Yep.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, 700 gallons. You're going to have about 180 gallons in this tank, if I remember correctly, is what he told me. I'm like, that's not a very good ratio if you're going to be feeding that tank for NPS corals and then having the water flow from the sump into that tank. I'm like, hold on, I got a really good idea. Here's how you can do it. Take the total water volume in your NPS tank, and you want that to turn over once a month into that other tank.
Yeah.
I'm like, how are you going to do that? I said, I got the perfect idea.
Mm-hmm.
Get yourself a dosing pump. I said, and have it dosing 24 hours a day.
It's a very slow auto water change, basically.
And just have your drain draining that little teeny bit of water, and just do 100% water change on it once a month or all month long.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and still monitor the nutrients in your NPS tank.
Yep.
And monitor them in your main tank. And if you're already dosing nutrients, which he has been, he's been dosing nitrates and phosphates.
Well, then he's set then. That's a perfect solution. So
then he's a smart guy. I said, so bottom line, you need to figure it out from there.
Oh, yeah, but you suggest your dosing, so you're not dosing nitrate and phosphate, and you're set.
I said, you could be turning it over 180 gallons a week. You could be
Chris,
turning over 180 gallons every 2 weeks.
We just solved your problem of dosing nitrates and phosphates. You need an NPS tank that doses your main systems.
It's already gone through my maze up here. I'm like, you know what? That would be the best thing I could do to try to keep NPS corals as a
how much
these animals.
But if you're dosing nitrate and phosphate anyways, how much cooler is this of a solution? And then you can have both.
I couldn't agree with you more. So if it wouldn't have been for John talking to me
I like
today,
it.
And you talking about it right now.
Yep.
My brain now is telling me that it's stupid for me to not set up a smaller system, which I got a 4,500 gallon tank that I'm dosing a lot of nitrates and phosphates on.
Perfect.
And I could just start using the spare dosing head from the dose and do a water change on that tank. Damn it, Devin. Now I got a freaking project.
6 months from now, I expect an update.
More employees.
In 6 months, I'm going to bug you about this, if I remember, and then we'll get the update on it.
It's not happening in 6 months.
6 months is a good buffer to find in a year.
Adding more to my plate as it is. I got kids.
Once you get a new employee, then the 6 months will start.
What?
I said once you get a new good employee, then the 6 months timer starts. But it is a cool idea.
Deal.
If you need NO3, nitrate and phosphate anyways, like it's a really cool solution.
And I also see it as a way to continuously feed your aquarium.
Exactly. Which is win-win. The acros, everything will be happy. So I guess
but
I have a side question. Yeah, go ahead.
He has to also understand that he is going to be dosing.
Mm-hmm.
He's got at his fingertips, he's got all of those different types of bacteria. So he's also going to be dosing that stuff. That's going to be going into the aquarium. So what is going to happen? I'm going to let him figure the whole damn thing out first, because
then fill you in.
If it has problems with like salinity rise in the small tank, or you know what I mean, or a drop because you're
fair. Depends how much you dose and what's in it.
I'm sure he's a smart guy. He'll have it figured out in 6 months. So hopefully I have an employee by then. And in 6 months I can just figure it out myself.
I have a question for you. So nitrates and phosphates, we worry about more for acros and other corals. Do MPS care about them as much? Like, is there a too high for them?
Of course they do.
Well, I know, but what is that level? Like, I'm assuming it's a higher buffer than an SPS, but...
I honestly couldn't tell you what it is.
All right, same boat.
I can tell you from what I know from wild reefs, because I was curious about this a long time ago, and I mentioned to one of my divers that is in Australia when he goes and collects. He has a patch reef that he collects out the mouth of a river about 10 miles out. That's full of dendrophilia, balanophilia, and tabastria, and the nutrient levels aren't really any different than what they are at reefs that are just north of there that are full of microlords, and then just north of there it's a little bit elevated compared to the rest of the ocean, but it's fairly consistent with the rest of the ocean. It's not enough to, so can they handle higher nutrients? I guess because naturally they live in higher nutrients than all the other corals. I guess it's a positive, theoretically, anecdotally, yes, they can handle all the higher nutrients that we think.
No, that's fair.
There's no fact behind any of that.
Yeah, no, never. But yeah, I know it was interesting. Thought that popped into my head, but it would be cool. All right, Chris, we're almost at 2 hours. I feel like I should let you go, but I could easily keep going. But
Oh my gosh.
I know, I
I'm
know. So
sorry,
now,
man.
now we're in.
I
I
had
don't,
so
I
much
don't
fun,
care.
Devin.
I just feel bad
I
for
had
you because I
fun.
know you're 3 hours ahead of me.
No, Jesus, it's 9 o'clock. I'm ready to go. I mean,
All right.
yeah, do you have, is there people still watching or do they get bored?
Yeah, no, we got over 100 people still on.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you all for joining.
Yeah, I
Big
appreciate it. But yeah, no, so many good rabbit holes. I always love our chats.
time. Me too, buddy. We got to do it at least, well, when was the last time we did it?
I don't know, far too long. I don't know.
Maybe
Every
at
couple
least
months we got to
twice.
do it.
Yeah,
Every
at least
three,
twice or 3 times a year.
every
Every
3 or 4
months at
months.
most.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, sounds good.
For
All
sure.
right, I will let you go. Give you back to the family. I thank you for joining me tonight. I do appreciate it. Thank
Thank you,
everyone
sir,
who's
for having me
watching.
on.
Anytime. Niagara Fire Curls, thanks for the super chat. Everyone else, thank you guys for joining. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. Chris, you're always a pleasure. And yeah, thanks guys.
Buddy.
Have a good night.
Thank you all. Have a great
Thanks.
night. Thank you.
End stream. End stream number 1.